Well, good evening, everybody. We are going to give the stream a few seconds to get up and running. Hopefully, we will be going pretty well here in just a few moments. Welcome to Rock Solid Productions, where this week's episode, this week's stream, we are going to be talking about our favorite consoles of all time. We're going to play a little Super Mario World here on the Super NES Junior in a couple moments, but want to kind of get things rolling here, make sure we are streaming, everything is going as it should be. Still waiting to see things on my end. If you are here, if you are in the chat, please do me a favor, say hi. I see Nightcore Hitman. Hey yo, let me know. Hello Gingerbeard the Gaming Dad, how you doing? Let me know how things look, how they sound. Trying a slightly different setup tonight, where I'm actually using my DSLR to capture our footage and kind of keeping an eye on everything. So we are going to go through and talk about our favorite video game systems of all time. It's the 8-Bit Glitch. How you guys doing? Now, if you want to weigh in, we do not have a guest host tonight, but if you look in the more info section, there is a link to our Discord server. Hop in there if you want to join. We can go ahead and have you join in the conversation if you would like. I'm still not there. We are. Hope you guys enjoyed the splash screen, by the way. Hey, I'm not hearing the mic hiss like I normally hear either, so that is a huge improvement over previous week. So definitely excited to see that. So we put a poll up on Rock Solid Productions on YouTube as my phone falls. Hang on. Put a poll up last week asking what you guys wanted to see as a topic. It was, I think, favorite Mario game, favorite Sonic game, favorite genre of gaming, favorite consoles, and this week's winner was favorite consoles. And we have our list here. Did you see it? I bet you didn't, did you? And we're going to be talking about some oddball things as we go through here. And again, feel free to weigh in either in the chat, or if you actually want to join via the Discord server, you can do so, and we will pull you in. If you join the Discord, just let me know, and I will pull you in so that we can go ahead and have you as a part of the conversation. So we're going to be going from my Discord voice is very quiet. Still? The voice right now is quiet. Oh, can you hear me on Discord? You be able to, but hell, I don't know. Take a look here behind the scenes. Now he's got my curiosity as far as what's going on Discord. Actually, I don't even have my Discord open right now, so it might help if I do that, wouldn't it? Everything is, let's see. Looks like we're pretty good. It is a couple minutes after 8, so we will get rolling. And again, if you guys have, if you want to weigh in, if you want to join the voice chat and everything and participate, just throw a comment in the stream here, and I will pull you in so you can actually go ahead and weigh in. So we are going to hop into Super Mario World. I've played this cartridge a little bit. As you see, I'm at level 15. So I have 10 systems I'm going to go through, and some of them I'm going to go through faster. Some I'm going to spend a little bit more time with. But my number 10, and this is one that people may not really dig a whole lot, or it might really raise an eyebrow, is the Retron 5. And there's a reason why I have this as one of my top 10 consoles. It's this console that got me back into old school gaming. Basically, Super NES, NES, and it was the first experience I had with retro games in HD. I did not... I wasn't into any of the systems that came out prior to that had just the component or composite video output. Most of them just had composite output, and the quality wasn't very good. I know that there is controversy regarding the Retron 5, as far as the source code and everything, and where they got everything from. It will grant you this. However, at the same time, Hyperkin also did design the hardware, and they should be allowed to make a profit off of that. So, Nightcore, if you want to hit join on in, give me a second. I will pull you into the Discord. I will throw it to you in a second. Here. Right, Nightcore, you should be in the chat here if you want to say something real quick just to make sure everything's working okay. Not hearing anything. I don't know if anyone else is. Well, we'll keep going, and I'll work on this in the background, making sure. Oh, pause, and I wasn't. So what I liked about the Retron 5, first of all, is the fact that you actually got more than just 5 systems with it. You got a ton of systems that you were able to utilize in with the Retron 5. Nightcore, I think I heard you there. Okay, I'll see if I can raise my volume in the Discord side. If anyone can hear Nightcore in the chat, let me know. You might have to just listen to the YouTube feed and kind of play it that way. Yeah, you're coming through really quiet on my end too, so and now I can barely hear you. I was running into this problem last week, so we may just do, if you want to weigh in on the chat, we'll do it that way. Sorry about that. New technology, what can I say? Okay, I can barely hear you, however, is the problem. See if I can... Try one more time here. Go ahead and let's do a mic check real quick here. I can hear you, but I'm not seeing your levels pull through, so I don't know that it's bringing any audio through. It would be on my end. It's not on your end. It's on mine. Got Discord at 100. It's just not pulling through. Let us see here. Hey, Sean, how you doing? Yeah, you're probably going to have to do it just in the chat, man. So, sorry. We had a bit of an issue with this last week, too. So, feel free to weigh in there. And if you want, we'll keep your place in line, and we'll get you on in a future show. How's that sound? Which one? The Dreamcast is not on my list. Nope, it is not on my list. So feel free to go ahead and throw that in there. So, so yeah, let's get hop on out then, and feel free to throw that in the chat, and we'll take a break in between each one if folks want to discuss as well. This is something new we are trying on the channel. It's just not 100% yet, and I apologize for that, but we'll get it there. Okay. So again, on the Retron 5, it's really what got me not only back into retro gaming, but it's also what helped me discover my love for import systems. I had never, I knew what the Super Famicom and what the Famicom were, but I had never played one. I had never seen a cartridge for either of them. Oh, I'm just missing that. And what was nice about the Retron 5 is I was able to play both of those systems quickly and easily. And the great thing, too, with... I guess I had already gotten that one. I got to go through the normal exit. With a lot of those import games, the additional benefit was just that they're cheaper. You look at the cost of a lot of games in the U.S. Donkey Kong Country. Perfect example of just how expensive the Donkey Kong Country games are on the U.S. version. In Japan, I got all 3 Donkey Kong Country games for about $20. Really a good value there. In addition, check my Discord to see if the speaker is on. I will check that here in a second. In addition, it also gave me the opportunity to play a lot of games that I wouldn't have, and gave me the opportunity also to play my 3DS. I'm sorry, not my 3DS, but my DS, not even DS, Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color games on my TV without any problem whatsoever. Oh, and it did so using an HDMI cable, which looked great. You can go ahead and install custom patches and things along those lines to do translations. It's overall a really good machine. The one thing that sucks about it is the stock controller is terrible. That's pretty much a given for the Retron 5 is just the stock controller. Unless you are a huge fan of micro switches, you'll probably want to pick up something better and different. I myself, that's how I started using 8-bit DOE controllers, was I picked up one of the early 8-bit DOE controllers for my Retron 5, and I've used it for other systems since. So my number 10 is the Retron 5. Now, my number 9 is... I didn't want to have it just be consoles. Wanted a handheld on here, even though I don't do a ton of handheld gaming. But when I did most of my handheld gaming, there was one system that I probably enjoyed more than any other, and that would be the original Nintendo DS. Why would I pick the DS over the 3DS or the Game Boy Advance or Game Boy Advance SP? Well, first and foremost, just the library of games that the DS can play is pretty superior to just about any other system that's out there. It will play the entire Game Boy library, Game Boy Color, and Game Boy Advanced. Later, revisions of the hardware did not play all of the Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance games. So just the library was a lot better there. The colors and the display was, really, really good on the DS. And overall, it felt like a finished and polished system. Now, the Game Boy I always loved, and I always enjoyed playing the games, but black and white kind of got old. It was a battery monster, and the screen was just so small. And the DSi, I never owned. I went straight from the DS to the DS Lite, and then on the DS Lite, you lost some of the functionality with Game Boy games. So I do really enjoy I'm trying to make sure I don't hit any ghosts here. I do really enjoy playing on the original DS. It's a little bit bigger hardware too, and with not that I have the biggest hands, but for me, what do I do with my hands? It is more comfortable, especially, getting older. I've got a touch of arthritis and whatnot. Where the 3DS, the new 3DS, is painful for me to play. After a while, my hands just hurt. Now, you didn't have items such as Shop and some of the other things that you would get on later revisions of the hardware, but I was okay with that. I've never understood what this... there's nothing up there. So I do really like the original Nintendo DS. It's probably one of my, if not my, well, at least according to the list that I have here, it's my favorite handheld of all time. Up next I know people are going to say, well, you're a Nintendo fanboy, so you're just going to focus on Nintendo. Nope, I'm not going to just focus on Nintendo because my next, there we go, my next console is the Sega Genesis or the Sega Mega Drive. And I'm also including things like the Sega CD and 32X on that because, let's be honest with you, without the Genesis, you can't play the Tower of Power. If you guys are getting some lag, let me know. I'm not seeing any drop frames on my end. So far, so good. Comcast has not crapped out on me yet. Like last week's stream. So the Sega Genesis was the first Sega console that I owned. It was one of those where Sonic, was, for me, a system seller. I wanted to play Sonic the Hedgehog 2, and that's actually the system that I bought came bundled. It was a Model 2 Genesis. I remember buying it at Kohl's, and I bought the Genesis 2 with Sonic, and I enjoyed it for a while, but it was just for a while. Really, it was one of those things that over time, it didn't have the appeal to me of... Run up there. Nope. If I get through here. The original Genesis, just I didn't appreciate the games at the time. Hey Edgar, how you doing? I didn't want to play all the sports games. I was a Nintendo fanboy, so at that point in time, I wanted to be able to play my Earthworm Jim on the Super NES. I really thought that the Super NES was the superior system, and it wasn't in a lot of ways. Again, I look at the definitive edition of, of Earthworm Jim is the one on the Genesis, and I can admit that now. I couldn't back in the day. Alright, guys, I'm doing something wrong here. Because there should be another way, another exit, because there is a house on the top of that. If anyone remembers how to get that, let me know, but I will continue here. There are games that I now absolutely love on the Genesis. My Genesis collection is decent size. I would say it's about the size of my PlayStation collection. Not huge, but decent. But there are a lot of masterpieces on that game on that system that I did not get the first round. Up next, I mentioned earlier the Retron 5 and the fact that it introduced me to Japanese games. Well, the first Japanese system that I purchased was actually the Sharp Famicom Twin, and that is my next one on the list. And why I love the Sharp Famicom Twin, there's a lot of reasons why. First and foremost is the fact that it kills two birds in one stone. It gets you both a Famicom and a Famicom disk system in one convenient package versus the original Famicom where you needed to purchase a disk system separately, and there could sometimes be issues with getting systems that work properly. The reliability was not always there. You also had things such as the fact that the Famicom, unless you get it AV modded, you actually have to connect to regular RF outputs, and it's like channel 98 or 99 in the US. I just glitched there for some. That was odd. Yeah, I did. That is checked, Nightcore. So I will work on that. And now one thing with both the Famicom and the Sharp Famicom Twin is the fact that both systems come with hardwired connector for the controllers. Now on the Sharp Famicom Twin, at least the version that I actually have the turbo version, which means there is a switch I can flip and I can get turbo functionality on the A or B buttons. Which is really, really cool. Also, like I say, the Sharp Famicom Twin does give you traditional AV output, so it is much easier to connect to your American televisions. In addition, you can also connect it to devices such as the RetroTink and a FrameMeister. There is no RGB mod for it at the time. I don't know if it's possible or not. I know I've talked to Jason over at GameTech.us, and at this time there is one. Hey John, how you doing? Monsoon? Nope, no monsoon here. We just have the brain. Wrestling joke. Oh, you stinky spiny. And another thing for me on the Sharp Famicom Twin was the fact that when I bought mine, I got a boatload of games with it for about $120. It is one of the best purchases I have ever made, and it came with both discs and cartridges. I was able to quickly and easily go through it, and the games that I didn't want, I've gotten rid of or I've shared with other people. John Riggs has gotten some of the games that I had gotten with it, RGT85 as well. And that's one of the cool things about collecting for the system is there's always someone new somewhere starting to collect for the Famicom or the Famicom Disk System. The Sharp Famicom Twin, especially the Turbo version, in my opinion, is the best version of the Famicom if you are looking to collect it. So again, for those joining in late, number 10 was the Retron 5. Number 9 was the Nintendo DS. Number 8 was the Sega Genesis, Sega Mega Drive. Number 7 is the Sharp Famicom Twin. Number 6, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, yes, is going to be the Sega Master System. What? You're a Nintendo fanboy. How can you possibly say something nice about Sega? Well, I have to admit, the Sega Master System, from a technological standpoint, it's superior to the NES. The sound is better, the colors are better. I just think it is a better system as far as from a hardware standpoint. Now, software, definitely lacking. The games that are great are really, really great. Unfortunately, there aren't enough of those really great games, in my opinion. I love Double Dragon on it. R-Type is amazing. Rampage is great. Got skunked there. And I have to admit, too... Oh, saw that coming. Didn't stop myself. The controller as well, I think, is actually a more comfortable controller than the NES controller. Not the Dogbone one, the original NES. I don't like the D-pad as much, and the fact that the system had a built-in game, actually pretty darn cool. That was something that you didn't hear of at that point in time, and it even had, I know they weren't Hue cards, but they had Hue card-like things, so I definitely love the Master System. It is one of those systems that I didn't own when I was a kid. My friend Kyle Keppen actually had one. So I was able to play his with him a little bit here and there. Kind of a jerk thing to do, to just be like, hey Kyle, let me come over so we can play Master System. Some people would say I'm a jerk now. Oh no! So the Master System is number 6 for me. Number 5 is a system we're going to be talking about a whole lot during the next week or so, and that is the Nintendo 64. That's right. The last cartridge-based console from Nintendo until the Switch. The N64 really changed, for me, the game in a number of different ways. I actually really liked the Trident controller right out of the box. I thought it was a really comfortable, unique way to play. And it gave you a lot of different and dynamic gameplay options that you simply could not do with other systems. You could play as a traditional, almost like a Super NES controller. And again, I am using the Hyperkin wireless controller here on my Super NES Junior. You could play like a Super NES controller. You could play as with your right hand on the center stick and your left hand on the center stick, right hand on the buttons. figuring out left to right is hard for me, especially when I'm looking at a camera and everything reversed. It also was one of those games too, or systems, that just had so many great games. Super Mario 64 has been for years the Mario game all others were judged against. That's not a coincidence. And it was a launch title. On. Got it. You had games on there like Rogue Squadron, which is awesome. You had capabilities to expand the memory in the card with the RAM booster. There was just so much that you could do with the N64, including 4-player multiplayer. If you didn't grow up back in the mid-90s when the N64 was out and had a group of buddies that you played, Smash Brothers or Mario Kart 64 or GoldenEye. GoldenEye was awesome for multiplayer. You really missed out. It was before we had, online co-op. Couch co-op was a real thing, and the N64 made it amazing. Now, I mentioned we're going to be talking about the N64 quite a bit this next week. Don't forget, later on this week, we will have our review video going live on Super 64 from Eon Gaming. The edits are done. It's ready to go live. We just have to wait until 12 p.m. West Coast time before we can post it, just because of the content embargo. So that is my bottom 5 of my top 10: the Retron 5, the DS, the Genesis, the Sharp Famicom, the Master System, and the N64. Let's check the chat to see what people are saying here. Let's see. Fate for Windows. Don't know that I've seen you before in here. Welcome very much for 4th Gen with my nostalgia giggles on Easily the Super NES for all the years. Super NES referenced yet. For all the years when my grandma let me play on hers when I visit her each summer. Nowadays, prefer the Genesis. I can understand that, but I have to say, let me ask you this, Fate for Windows. I still prefer this controller, though, over the Genesis controller, even the 6-button. As most of my friend Edgar says, most of my friends know exactly what my favorite console is: the mighty Super Nintendo, because it was my first console and second Super Metroid. Yep. Sound is debatable in my opinion, but yeah, definitely a console with the better hardware. Wouldn't say a jerk more than a lovable goof. I appreciate that, Nightcore. Sean says, Gary, Super Mario World is my second favorite retro Mario game. Super Mario 3 is my number 1. I'm the exact opposite. I prefer Mario World. Mario 3 is my second favorite retro game. Once I was playing Super Mario World, and a Buzzy Beetle glitched in the wall. Whoa! Edgar says the Sega Genesis is really like how I know it, because my childhood friends on my neighborhood, and all of them had Sega Genesis, and I was the only kid that had a Super NES, but it didn't matter to you too much. Fate for Windows also says, have to agree, many of the games are showing their age now, but the 6th gen are really defined stuff. And that gives the games from their gem charm. See, I will say, I think the games for the 6th gen, specifically, I mean, that's like, we're talking the N64, we're talking the Saturn/Dreamcast. I don't know which, I guess Dreamcast would be more 7th. So the Saturn, the N64, wouldn't classify necessarily the PlayStation in there yet. I think between the Saturn and the N64 games have honestly aged better, especially with all of the features that are coming out now, where you can do the RGB and the HDMI mods for the N64, which you just could not do. Am I trapped here? Sense. There was. Oh, just for a 1-up? Oh, that sucks. I mean, when you have things like the HD Retrovision cables, you've got Voltar's RGB mod, you have the Super now coming, you have, the Ultra 64 mod as well. There's just so much that you can do on the console itself, and then you add in things like the Tribute 64 from Retrobit. You bring up the Brawler 64 from Retro Fighters, the upcoming Admiral from Hyperkin, and then you even have the Hyperkin HDMI equipped system that's getting ready to come out. Well, they're testing right now, say that. You know, there's a lot of love for the N64, more than what we've seen in recent years. Oh, right up the rear end there. So I think, honestly, that generation of games has been, on the N64, has aged better than others. My number 4, I've got to go with the Nintendo GameCube. To me, the GameCube, there's a lot of things that I loved about that system and still do. First of all, the fact, like we were just talking about with the Super 64, you can now get the Eon Gaming GCHD Mark II to get an HDMI output out of the digital output on the back of the system without requiring a mod. There is a mod kit out there if you'd rather have it hardwired, but it's not necessary. I love the GameCube controller. It's probably my favorite controller of all time, next to the system that will be one on this list. The controller is just so comfortable to use, so easy to use. One of the first ones, not the first one, actually it was the first system to include, or not include, but have OEM wireless controller available, and the Wavebird. And the Wavebird was just super awesome. It was comfortable. It had all the features of the standard controller, minus the vibration. That's the one thing that the Wavebird did not have, was the rumble. But something had to give somewhere, right? The games on the GameCube were phenomenal, even though they were gimped compared to the games, similar titles on other systems. A lot of times you saw games split into 2 discs because the discs that Nintendo decided to use were they were too small. Physically and as far as their actual storage and everything. Simply too small for what the developers really wanted and needed at the time, as titles continued to grow in size and graphical needs. You also had things on the GameCube, such as the Game Boy player, that, especially now, again, I mentioned the GCHD a couple of times here, the fact that you can play OEM Nintendo hardware through HDMI, no mod kit required, is pretty, to use an RC term, it's dialed. It's Game Boy games, Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color games just look so good. Aha, I was able to still get the one. Going through that system, and it also has, one of, if not my favorite Star Wars games of all time, in Rogue Squadron 3. Not probably Super Mario Sunshine, actually probably my least favorite Mario game as far as a mainline platformer. It was not a very good follow-up to Mario 64, in my opinion. I know there are people that loved Mario Sunshine. I didn't care for it a whole lot. Have a copy. Mario Double Dash is great. Absolutely love Resident Evil on the platform too. Oh. Now, I will say I did play Resident Evil more on the Wii than on the GameCube, but it is one of those things where I am now going back and playing it through the GameCube with the traditional controls versus the motion controls, and it is a different playthrough experience. But overall, the GameCube, to me, one of my top systems of all time. It is number 4 on my list, at least right now. And this is going to be a fairly fluid list that may change over time. My number 3, well, it's the number 1 as far as the highest selling console of all time, still to this point. I'm talking about the Sony PlayStation 2. For me, the PlayStation 2 was neat for a couple of reasons. First of all, it was my first DVD player. And for a lot of us, it was our first DVD player. And I will check the chat after this one. The DualShock 2 controllers were great. The games were phenomenal. They could fit more data on them. You had epic games like Gran Turismo that, while they started on the PlayStation 1, they got defined on the PlayStation 2. You also had the launch of such games like Jax and Daxter and Ratchet and Clank, and just so many great games that started their life on the PlayStation 2. It featured, a lot better graphics that I think have aged a lot better than the original PlayStation. That's one of the reasons why I don't have the original PlayStation on this list, is I do not think that those games have aged nearly as well. And I think that's actually hurt a little bit in terms of the PlayStation Classic. I don't think those original games were quite as good as what the PlayStation 2 games wound up being. The hardware just wasn't there. We had games for the PlayStation 2 being made into the 2000s and actually into the bank. The PlayStation 2 was a beast when it came to hardware. And the PlayStation Slim, some of the... Oh, I thought I was going to... Didn't. The PlayStation 2 Slim addressed some of the minor hardware quips that people had out there. The fact that... the disk drive tray may not always have been the most reliable out there. The fact that it had, if I remember right, it also had the LAN adapter was built to it, whereas on the fat PlayStation 2, I'm pretty sure... Well, I know on the fat PlayStation 2 you had to buy it. Because I did. Oh, that's right. He can't kill it. I can, however. So my number 3 is the Sony PlayStation 2. Let's check the chat again, see what people are saying in here. Tough choice. I'd say the Fate for Windows says tough choice for the Super NES pad, just because a little bit more ergonomic and the shoulder buttons help. There are games where I'd rather use the 6-button controller. That is the Genesis versus Super NES controller discussion there. Also, it's one of those things, too, where I just don't... I never thought that the 6 face buttons were nearly as comfortable and easy to use as the 2 shoulder buttons. We will be doing a What's Your Favorite later on, talking about what your favorite controllers are, too. Let's see. Edgar says the N64 is a console that I enjoy with my friend Dylan, who's a huge fan of the N64, especially Mario Kart 64. That's such a great game. And it's actually aged really, really well. Fate for Windows says, also, yep, Nuke came here from a Castlemania retweet. Can't argue with the GameCube choice at all. Speaking of Castlemania games, this week's episode of What's Your Favorite Wednesday is, of course, brought to you by Ryan over at CastlemaniaGames.com. Make sure that you check them out for all your modern and retro gaming needs. I have the link below in the more information section. One of the cool things, too, lately is Ryan has added what's called Castle Cash to the site. And with Castle Cash, the more you spend, the more you save in the long term. It's a loyalty program where you earn points for every dollar that you spend that you can cash in towards discounts on purchases later on down the road. And if you use promo code ROCKSOLID10, you will get 10% off of most items. Website, not all of them, but most. So make sure you check out CastlemaniaGames.com. Let's see. Matthew Palmer, 69. No idea what that's in reference to. PS2, should have expected that. Yep, agreed. The PS2 was a beast, especially compared to the PS1. The 3D games have been given time to develop through the 5th gen. Absolutely. Funny to say, Edgar, most of my friends love the GameCube. Most of them said their first console, which was interesting. As for my older friends, they prefer either the PS2 or the OG Xbox. Never been a fan of the Xbox. Nightcore, yes. Give me a second. We will. We can try something if you have an idea. Like I say, What we had to do last week, honestly, was start and restart OBS a couple of times before we finally got it working right. And yes, typing on a phone is painful. Let's see if we can go in there. And we did. Now, I am not nearly good enough to be able to do the unlimited one-ups. Oh, if I could do wall kicks, that would be awesome. My number 2. Now, some people may say, hey, you already said a variant of this system. You can't... Oh, yes, I died. You already said a variant. You can't be, you know... What's this doubling up? The Nintendo Entertainment System. But wait, you said the Famicom earlier. Consider the Famicom Twin to be a different system because the hardware is different, because the capabilities are different, because they do not play the same titles. And as such, I do classify the NES and I'm sorry, not the Super NES, but the Famicom as different systems. Now, on the NES, one of the cool things is the fact, you know, the iconic toaster design we all know, we all love. It is just an amazing piece of hardware from an aesthetic standpoint. What some may not realize is the reason why the NES has the shape that it does is because Nintendo did not want the NES to look like a video game system. They were afraid after the video game crash of 1983 that video games had such a bad connotation here in the USA that they wanted to go for something that looked like more something that you would find in your living room. They wanted it to look like a VCR. Well, they succeeded with the toaster design on the original NES. But I will say that is not my favorite NES. My favorite NES, the NES 101, the top loader. And there's a few reasons why. First and foremost, on the NES 101, you don't have to worry about region locking. It is region free. So I can actually play my PAL NES games on my NES top loader. It also just works. With the original NES, one of the problems that you had was, of course, the flashing red light. If you got dirt on your contacts, if you had a game that, you know, was not registered properly through Nintendo, like some of the Tengen games and whatnot, that you could have issues with. Dangerous there. The NES 101 was vastly superior to the original in most aspects. Now, it did not have stock out-of-the-box AV outputs. For that, you would have to either get an adapter, or... Actually, there wasn't even an adapter. There actually was an AV version of that system. It's pretty rare. But you can now either RGB mod the system, or you can do like what I've done, which is the HDMI mod kit for the top loader. And when you do that, you get a system that looks great, that sounds great, that's reliable. I think the Dogbone controller was an improvement in every stretch of the imagination over the original Nintendo Entertainment System's controller. Overall, it's just not my day to get through that, is it? The NES 101 is just... It's my favorite version of the NES! Alright, so let's go through what we have here from 10 down to 1. The Retron 5, the Nintendo DS, the Sega Genesis, the Sharp Famicom, the Sega Master System, the N64, the GameCube, the PlayStation 2, the NES. I'm going to throw this one to the chat. What could my number 1 system of all time be? Who knows what my favorite system? Whoever says the Virtual Boy, get out. Although I do own a Virtual Boy, I like my Virtual Boy. It is not the greatest system in the world. But let's see who can guess what my favorite system of all time is as we go through some of the comments here. We have Night Course thinking I could tell you what my favorites are and why, and you could relay them to everyone. That's fine if you want to go ahead and do that. Let's see. Edgar says, with you, Gary, I was never an Xbox fan since I don't really find anything interesting on that console. There are some interesting titles. Like, I think I would have enjoyed playing Halo. Take the controller. I always have. Fate for Windows, the Famicom and NES are nearly the same, but there are some other elements which make them very different. Like the design, as you talking about. The other hand, on the Famicom, you do have the expansion audio, which if you play the expanded audio games through a Sharp Famicom Twin, the audio is amazing on like Castlevania, not Castlevania, Castlevania, and on Metroid. It's just awesome. Let's see. Night Course says, doubt he'll be right, but the OG Game Boy, you would not be right. Game Boy Color, nope. Fate for Windows had something in there, but retracted it. It's actually not too hard to guess. Edgar says he did play Halo, and I really suck at it. Well, I would probably really suck at it too, then. My favorite system, all time. Well, classified as two of them because from a hardware standpoint, they're virtually identical. The Super Nintendo, the Super Famicom. Of course, what I'm playing now, it's one of the reasons why I'm playing the Super NES right now, is the fact it is my absolute favorite system of all time. It has my favorite version of Super Mario Brothers. No, not the Xbox 360. Never the Xbox 360. I hear you, DOA. Is that you there? Okay, let me see if I can. I'm gonna try something here if we can get you in while I kind of continue this. I'm gonna pause the game for a second. So on the Super NES, you really had games for the first time that looked, I don't want to say real, but I mean they looked a step up from even the NES compared to the Atari 2600. It was damned amazing. And the playthrough and the replayability, the epic level of those games was just... There were so many amazing titles for the Super NES. Sorry about that if you guys are hearing an issue there. Nightcore, go ahead and try it again now. May have gotten it. Nope, still not coming through Discord. Wait, hold on. I saw the UV meter flash. Maybe there. Hang on, guys. Yeah, I'm getting you, but I'm just not getting enough coming through. It's just not coming through well enough, unfortunately. Let me do this. We're gonna do it ghetto style. I'm gonna fire up Discord on my phone and have you go through there if we can't get you working. But the Super NES, the controller, it's my favorite controller of all time. It's one of those systems that is so amazing, and especially with the systems that we have now, where you have all the HDMI clones that are out there, and you have good ones and bad ones. We've tested a lot of them out there. You have companies still making games for the Super NES. We saw last year, we saw the R-Type returns from Retrobit, and we're getting new releases as well for the system, new and never seen before. It's one of those things that hopefully work. That it is without a doubt my favorite system of all time. And we're gonna see DOA if you want. I'm gonna actually mute my phones here and go ahead and say something. Let me see if I can pick you up through my phone. Yeah, not getting it. Maybe if I hit connect to voice, that'll make a difference. There you go, DOA. I think we've got you now. Go ahead and try something. I can hear you now. I'd say you probably have to talk up a little bit because I've got the phone up to the microphone itself. So I know how I can solve this in the future, where I can just do a jumper cable basically from my headphone jack into my computer, so we can do it that way. But so what are your thoughts on this? Oh, DOA, can you hear me? I can hear him here and there. Not getting a whole lot coming through. Oh, there we go. Yeah, just not working 100% here, unfortunately. So that is my top 10 list of games. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls and gifted animals, we have the one, the only Castlemania Ryan is in the house. And don't forget that this stream, What's Your Wednesday, is always brought to you, at least for the first 2 weeks here, has been brought to you by CastlemaniaGames.com. Make sure you check them out for all your modern and retro gaming needs. We have the link down below in the more info section, as always. Oh, as I get hit again. And don't forget, too, if you are at all interested in the Eon Gaming Super 64, make sure that you go through and pre-order yours now. I believe I saw a tweet earlier today that the first wave is sold out. Second wave is, if not sold out, it will be, as I die again. And yeah, I wasn't hearing anything, so I bumped or dropped out of there. Of course, sorry about that. Again, it's something that it's inconsistent right now, so we will get it dialed in the future. Holy cow, I'm only down to 1 life. So there are a lot of great systems on this list, and if you wanted to pick up a clone system to play any of those, again, Ryan's got those over at Castlemania. Like, he's got the the Hyperkin and the Retrobit systems over there. Believe, do you still have the Pound Super NES over there? Last I saw, you had that on a pretty good discount. And there are additional ways to go ahead and connect your systems to your TV from the Hyperkin HDMI cables that he has over there, the Retro Tank, the OSSC, a whole lot of different ways that you can make your retro gaming experience better over there. Wave 2 allocations are tight, so little tip too for you guys who are fans of the Super NES and Super Mario World. If you do the cave jump, or not the cave, the cape jump, and hit the boxes with the side of your cape, you'll get them every time. But you have to do it on the left-hand side. So let me know in the chat, as we've got a couple more minutes before we wrap things up, if you want to be on the show next week, go ahead. You can always email me, rocksolidmail@gmail.com. Send me out a tweet on Twitter at RockSolidStudios. You can also visit our Facebook page at facebook.com/productions. And if you want to, okay, we can try that. Give me a second here. My Discord back up. Abs. Let's see here. Oops. I'm going to exit out of here. Again, one of those things, new technology doesn't always work the best. So we will... All right, see if we can't get this working again. Oh, my microphone is turned off, as are my headphones. All right, let's try this one more time, see if we can get this working. DOA, can you hear me? Yeah, it's cutting in and out pretty badly here on my end. Yeah, it's picking up like every third word. So I think it's just the fact that I've got OBS set to use most of my assets here. Yeah, it's just not coming through. So I've got to figure this out on my end. We will get this figured out for next week. Apologize for that. We will get things working better in the future here. So I think, unless you guys have got any other questions, that may wrap it up for us tonight here on the stream. Again, sorry for some of the technical difficulties. We'll get it working better for next week. I'd like to be on the show, but in person if possible. That would be awesome, Ryan. Would always love to have you on here. On top of Retrobits releases, there's a lot of exciting homebrew coming out for both. That is true as well. Yeah, one of the things I'd like to do, Ryan, in the future is do a face-to-face camera stream. See if there's a way that we can't have the other person on camera instead of just by a disembodied voice. That's what we did last week. I don't know what's going on from a technical issue right now. It worked fine last week. And this one is, like I say, kind of giving me the fingers. So it's one of those things that we will learn and adapt and overcome and go from there. If this is your first time to the channel, do me a huge favor. Hit that subscribe button and hit that like button as well. What I was looking for Yoshi. I can do that. It helps the channel out, lets YouTube know that people appreciate what we are doing here and that we are doing things well. If you can as well, go ahead. We do have our Streamlabs information down below for folks to go ahead and check out and make donations to the channel if you would like. With a new one here, it does absolutely help the channel. Keep things going, especially with YouTube and their lovely demonetization algorithms that they have going on. You'll want to make sure that you are subscribed to. Like I mentioned earlier in the stream, we have a lot of content in the works for the Super 64 from Eon Gaming, which we mentioned quite a bit on tonight's stream. We do have the review filmed. Ryan has actually seen the first cut of the review. I think it's the best version of that video, or best review of the Super 64 that he has seen to date. But then again, I don't think he's seen any of them. Real time, thanks for stopping by. Appreciate it. Already did. And the bell, thank you, Fate for Windows. I appreciate it. And from everybody here with Rock Solid Productions, we appreciate you checking us out, what we have going on here. Make sure, again, you check out Ryan at CastlemaniaGames.com. He's got all your retro and modern gaming needs. We will see you soon. We may do some streaming later on this weekend from a 1/5 scale RC event. May do some live streams covering the Super 64 after the embargo lifts on Friday. But until then, ladies and gentlemen and gifted animals, we are checked out on.